A quiet home in a valley neighborhood, hiding a dark secret. I thought it was just a...
That's the wrong video, folks. Sorry about that. This is the People's Water Board Coalition Water Wednesday webcast for May 11th, 2022.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are back again, beloved community, with another installment of the People's Water Board Coalition's Water Wednesdays webcast. And today I am here again, as always, with my beloved co-host, Valerie Jean Blakely, our behind-the-scenes technical, Lou Novak, and Rosalind Walker. And today, people, we are going all the way down to the hot Southwest with a beloved friend of mine, Miss Colleen Wessel-McCoy. She is a member of the Arizona Poor People's Campaign and also joins me within the National Welfare Rights Union. And today we're going to talk about water issues that probably will sound very familiar to most of our viewers, but are going on in Arizona and particularly Phoenix as well. Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate you taking the time to come on the show and talk about issues that are going on in your community. Thanks, Colleen.
Thanks for having me. I'm a big fan of the organizing work that you're doing and the how you lead the way in this front of struggle. So I'm really glad to be with you.
Thanks.
You know, it's a short show, so we're going to get started. I really had no idea until last night when I dug into it, how serious the water issues are in Phoenix, Arizona. There's lots to talk about. First, I want to kind of ask you, I know that the Arizona Poor People's Campaign is really working hard on some of these water issues. You want to tell us a little bit about the Arizona Poor People's Campaign and how you started doing the water issues? What kind of happened that made that an important issue?
Yeah, thanks. So the Arizona Poor People's Campaign has a new and growing coordinating committee and leadership, and but actually a long history of working with Apache Stronghold around the struggle for Oak Flat. And that's one of the key water issues actually that, thinking about Arizona statewide and having impacts on Phoenix. So Oak Flat is about an hour east of Phoenix. It's a sacred Apache land that is part of the land itself is owned by the National Park Service, but there's copper underneath it. And so there's Senator McCain back in 2014 attached a rider to a defense bill, basically giving this land over to a private copper mining company. And there's been a fight since then, and they haven't been able to start that mining operation because there has been such an effective struggle to maintain that sacred land, and that fight still continues. And the Arizona Poor People's Campaign is really committed to supporting that struggle. But it's both it's a issue of religious freedom and sacred practice and sacred worship and indigenous sovereignty, but it's also a water issue. So Resolution Copper, the private company that's going to mine it, is going to use an incredibly destructive form of mining that basically creates a 2-mile wide crater where that sacred land is. And in order to do that kind of mining, they have to use 250 billion gallons of water. And this is in a region of the country where water is so precious and necessary and sacred. That's enough water to supply 140,000 people with water for 40 years. And that's how much water it would take to get this copper out of the ground using this method and leave a 2-mile crater. And once that water goes through that process, it's then tainted water, right? And so they've got this plan for holding that water, but that water is upstream of key and on top of key sources of water. And so it's not just that water that now is no longer usable, but that if that water puts at risk huge sources. The Gila River is put at risk, and that's a huge source of water for even more people. And so if that key Gila River And the company did have a dam failure with a project that they had in Brazil, using this same method of holding this tainted and poisonous wastewater. They have a record of their process failing. And so, water is really one of the, at the heart of this struggle. And it's part of, why we're, see this is something that's both imported for the San Carlos Apaches and Apache Stronghold, but it's an issue that impacts all Arizonans, and it really impacts residents of Phoenix and people that depend upon the Gila River.
Yeah, because you guys are going
glad
through
you
a
said
straight
it
drought
like
right
that.
now. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
but
Oh no, I'm glad you phrased it like that, because so many people in communities feel like, oh, this is just an issue in that particular community where they're doing that work, and they don't realize the interconnection of how it would affect the entire state or how it would affect surrounding communities. And it's shameful that the government's focus is, first of all, stealing this land from its rightful owners, which are the Apache, then using capitalism to withdraw the natural resource there with, and that's how they look at it. Oh, copper is a natural resource. Well, so is water. And it's actually a resource that is necessity for life for all of us. But you are putting the resource of copper and its removal over the resource of having clean water for people in that area. And that's just so horrible that that's the choices that are being made in our communities.
another part of it is because water's living, it's actually a living being. And, and it remembers, and it has, so once you put it, you treat it like that and it ends up in a tailings pond, it can never be put back into the water table again. That's what those are called, tailings ponds.
Yeah.
Right. Where they use the water in such a horrific way. They poison it in such a horrific way that they don't have nothing else to do with it. So they put them in these tailings ponds. It's bad for the entire environment, but also the criminal activity of using that much water in the middle of a drought with that many people. And so in animals, and the whole ecosystem needs it. It's criminal.
Yes.
It is.
I thought we had it bad when they were talking about Nestle was going to get a permit for 400 million gallons, but 280 billion gallons. I don't think most people can even fathom that amount of water at all.
It's a lot of water.
I can't even get a visual picture of that much water. All I can think of is like oceans.
Yeah.
And it's like, so you're going to use an ocean to get copper.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's disgusting.
It's horrible. It's beyond disgusting.
I read that there was
criminal.
Yeah. I read that there was serious affordability issues in Phoenix, Arizona. Can you kind of connect that?
So it's interesting. So, I'll talk a little bit about how the water services work and like that, how like the ideal of it, and then in practice. And so there's a system with the Phoenix. So it's a public water system, and there are parts of Arizona that have private water. And I want to get back to that, but it's a public service. And in the 90s, they developed this system where there's a fixed monthly charge for household water. So it's $4.50 a month for 7,500 gallons. And so the idea that is, if you don't have a pool and you don't have a grass, that this is enough water to get your household by. And so, I live in an apartment. And so this is more, what like a single family residence would be like. So my water is done a little bit differently as an apartment resident. But then after 10,000 gallons, the rate kicks up to $4 for every 1,000 gallons. And so they call it a conservation signal. And so it's the idea is that if you have a household that just does household things, that, water should be universally affordable. And then if you're going to have a pool or a grassy yard, you're going to have to pay extra for the water for that. And so this was started in the 90s. And, this along with other sort of conservation pressures, Phoenix actually uses less water today than 20 years ago, even though it has rapidly grown. And part of that is that, like, you know, people don't have grassy yards, like just 10% of yards use grass, and people do these really great like rock landscapes and stuff like that, and other ways of conserving. There's also a lot of swimming pools. A lot of people have swimming pools, but so in Phoenix, the average bill for sewer, solid waste, water, and taxes, and those are all tied together, and that's important to remember that those bills are linked, but that you know, the average bill is $93 a month for all of those things. And so that, if you are within the 7,500 gallons, if you stay within that, then your bill is lower. It's more like $60. So the average is 93, but that includes people that are, you know, choosing a lifestyle that includes more water. And then the average bill is $60. $30 of that is for solid waste. That's actually the higher piece there. So statewide water, the median is about $36 for 7,500 gallons of water. So Phoenix is about $5. Statewide, it's actually more like $36 just for the water, not for any of the fees or anything. And if you have privately owned, if your water company is privately owned, that jumps to $45.
Of course.
Yeah, and then there's some places like so there's a dashboard where you can go and you compare different water districts and see, like, really look into the details, and it tells you, is this nonprofit, for-profit, municipal, what's the poverty rate in this area, and then what are the water rates. And it's a really interesting dashboard you could use. So like one example is in Cucino, there's a private water company, and that same 7,500 gallons of water costs $155. And that's 3% of that area has a 17% federal poverty rate. And we know from the Poor People's Campaign that the federal poverty rate is a seriously inadequate way of measuring how well people are doing. And so if you got a 17% poverty rate, it's more like, you know, you would double that actually to know.
Over 30%.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly, right. And so 3% of household median income is going just to pay a water bill. And so that's actually a huge amount of water, $155 just for the water part of that.
Yeah.
And so there's places where there's really high bills, and people, because, you know, including that, because, you know, your bills are tied, all of these things are tied together. You know, in Phoenix in 2018 and fiscal year 2018, 2019, there were 23,000 water shutoffs just in Phoenix.
That was my next question.
Yeah, exactly.
It in 1 year?
In 1 year, there were 23 disconnections, and that includes, that is not only like people who couldn't afford to pay, it includes other instances like where there was a death or, you know, other situations.
You said 23,000?
23,000, yeah, unique disconnections.
Yeah, and if you think about it, even if there's always a lot more than just one person living in the house. So that's actually affecting, you know, 60,000 people or something like that, right?
Yeah.
We always had to clarify that, because they were, oh no, we only did 4,000 shutoffs last week or whatever. Well, no, you're affecting, that's how many houses.
That's how many
you're
houses.
affecting whole families.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I just wanted,
there is an assistance project, but that same year that there were 23,000 disconnections, there were only 3,000 families served by that disconnection, by the assistance program. So the Human Services Department is the one to facilitate that. But with 23,000 disconnections, only 3,000 families were assisted by that program.
Yeah, y'all need a water affordability plan, the whole country.
Yeah. So there's both like something that's pretty, you know, there's a model here, both with the municipal program where, you know, what a household, you know, if you know, what a household needs should be really affordable. And there's an idea here that sort of moves towards that. And yet it is it's not statewide for one, and it's still not affordable for a lot of families. And so I want to connect this also to rents in Phoenix. that, water bills are only part of the picture, and that rents have increased. Rents went up 30% in Phoenix last year. And then that's double the national rent increases at a time when there's like a huge national crisis on rent increases. And even with the national crisis, Phoenix rents were twice what the national average was. And that's on top of, what they expect to be another 20% increases this year. And that's on top of, like, between 2016 and 2021, Phoenix metro area rent climbed 80%, even though median household income only went up 22% during that same period. So like in my complex, like there's just, everybody is having to move because as our leases are renewed this year, our rents are going up between $300 and $400. And then
possible for people to make their ends meet, let alone pay their money.
It's a huge increase. And there's just stories all over the place of people's rents increasing 50% from year to year. They get a new lease and all of a sudden their rent goes from, $1,200 to $1,800 just overnight, their rent. And then where are they going to go? Where are people going to go? These rents are true everywhere. And like most of the construction of new apartments is luxury construction. Like they're not building new affordable housing. And so it's actually not solving the rent problem. And, as more and more people come in, people are coming in because it is considered more affordable. And then that's increasingly not the case. There's no rent control. There's actually a state law prohibiting rent control. And so then a third of,
there is.
Yeah, exactly. A third of Maricopa County, where I'm in Maricopa County, Phoenix is in Maricopa County, a third of Maricopa residents are paying more than 30% of their income for rent. And that is just, that is escalating rapidly, and it's just totally untenable. And so you have to layer the water payments on top of like just huge rent payments. And it's a huge crisis.
Crazy.
It's crazy.
I was just going back to what you were saying about the water rates and how they calculate it. And you were saying that like, if you use up to like 7,500 gallons, it's a certain fee. How do you calculate? How do they come up with that? You may have a home and it's just you and one other person in it. I may have a home with 7 people living in it. We're obviously not going to use, the same amount of water. And even if I stay under that 7,500, why should you be getting charged the same as me when you're using significantly less water?
Yeah. And then,
like, is it just a booby trap?
And as people are forced to double up because they can't afford, more and more families are, sharing space, that is going to be increasingly true.
Yeah.
I just read a thing the other day, and certainly me and my family have been doing it, but where kids are just like, it's easier for my parents if I stay home. It's easier for me if I stay home, and I can help chip in on their bills, and I don't have to worry about not being able to pay for school or books or whatever. I'm just going to stay home. Like I can't. So you're going to see that concentration all the way around, all over the nation of people, because the housing costs are just too much. And kids are just opting out. Like, I'm just going to stay home. You know what I mean? It's going to be more helpful for everybody involved. And that's really a shame that they'll never be a part of the world where home ownership or any of that is possible. Slowly but surely,
going back to the pioneer time, where the whole family just stayed in the house and the kids got married and their husbands and them, they lived in the same house, or they built a little shack that connected to the parents' house and everybody stayed together because it was what was affordable.
Yeah. It's really heartbreaking to see across the nation. Colleen, what kind of things can people do to get involved and really help with it? First of all, I think you guys need a water affordability plan. You're going to need to fight for it. And I don't know what a water affordability plan looks like in a place that doesn't have enough water for the people that live there. I mean, just doesn't, but what can people do? What's some of the solutions, and what can people do?
So one of the places where people are really organizing, and I want to also add into this mix another place where there's a real crisis. I mean, we talked about the Apache stronghold and the San Carlos Reservation, but there are just like really desperate water situations on many of the tribal lands and reservations in Arizona. And this is a place where people are organizing and fighting back and really insisting that these water crises be taken seriously. So nationally, not just in Arizona, but nationally, 48% of homes on Native American reservations don't have access to clean drinking water, reliable water sources, or adequate sanitation.
48%.
48% nationally.
Almost half.
48%, like that's
half.
I'm sorry, I just needed to emphasize,
you like let that land for a minute.
That's half.
So Navajo Nation, which is in the northeast corner of Arizona, and then also in New Mexico, and is sort of crosses several states, 30 to 40% of people don't have access to running water. And so people use tanks and fill up tanks on pickup trucks to haul water from spigots. And then uranium mining in that region in the 40s and 50s left behind radioactive waste. And so the water is tainted with uranium in other reservations because of this history of just totally exploiting Native people and their lands, and this resource extraction that continues today with Oak Flat. It just leaves poisoned water and poisoned land behind. And so, there's Hopi villages in Arizona where the arsenic levels are 3 to 4 times what the federal standard is. But this is where people are organizing, and the Intertribal Association of Arizona that represents 21 of the 22 tribes in the state are pushing for a national bill called Tribal Access to Clean Water. And it's a US Senate bill, Tribal Access to Clean Water, to fund like a massive investment in water infrastructure, clean water. And it really is going to take a response at that scale to solve this problem of this inequity in water access. And I just want to layer that on top of the history in Arizona of settler colonial commandeering of water, and that water has been a point even from the very beginning of this genocidal colonizing of this region. They knew from the start that water was a place where they had to take and claim and secure rights to. And they've used the federal government as early as 1897 to reserve lands tied to water. So there was a U.S. congressional sort of decision in 1897 that secured this land. And so the water that flows, they figured out that the rainwater in the north part of the state was filling the rivers, and so they reserved that land. They had Congress reserve that land, and sort of took the rights to that water. And so it's been just a struggle, a long history of struggle, legal struggles, Supreme Court cases. This isn't new, that there's been this long fight over the right to water in Arizona. And then that's where we're at today. And anything that we're struggling for today has to be layered on top of the reality that this land did not originally belong to those who possess it now, and the water did not belong to those who possess rights to it for now. And so, there's still huge legal battles. The Gila adjudication has been, people talk about it as the most complex lawsuit in US history. And it's about water. It's a struggle for water, and competing water rights claims. And so I think, really reckoning with this history of colonization as we talk about the right to water. And so we're talking about, water affordability for the people who live here now. We're talking about, clean water and water infrastructure on reservations. And we're talking about like fair water rights and like trying to like think critically and honestly about the history of colonization and genocide in our country, and that is in Arizona is all tied to water, and that's all in the mix together. And so, you know, as we talk about Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival, really taking seriously this like the distorted moral narratives of Christian nationalism, like that's in the mix here. The right to water, the right, you know, like the history of systemic racism is all tied in here. And this is where, you know, part of what the Poor People's Campaign does is not let these things be separated from each other. And then we have to organize around them in their relationship to each other. And similarly with the National Welfare Rights Union, you know, these fronts of struggle are deep, and the leadership of the poor is critical. You know, as y'all demonstrate, and as people here demonstrate, those who are in the forefront of the struggle for human rights and to end poverty, we have to find each other and unite and share our struggles and learn from each other, and keep ourselves connected to one another.
It's the only way we're going to get it done. And it's the only hope that it really is the only hope that we have, is for us to unite. That's one of the reasons that for years and years and years I organized with the Poor People's Campaign, because it became very evident that yes, it was going to be led by the poor and the people who were mostly impacted, and it was most importantly going to bring us all together. With all of the things that are facing, that we, especially as women and women of color, are facing right now, you know, coming together under one umbrella is so important. And yeah. Well, I appreciate the work that you're doing so much, Colleen, and the important work of the Poor People's Campaign, and definitely of the National Welfare Rights Union. We here in Michigan, we, you know, especially in Detroit, we're a movement city, and we participate in both of those things because it's so important. It's so good. So thank you so much for being a part of that, and doing that.
I've learned so much from y'all over the years, and have lifted up the People's Water Board. When people try to say that things aren't possible, I say you should look at this. Like, you should look at this example of how people organized, you know, and like y'all always are like one of the key examples of what this work looks like when we come together and really unite across difference and take on big systemic issues led by those who are at the, you know, are most ground into the problem.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much.
I always say we have to look at our commonalities instead of our differences and come together under those.
Yep. And movement work is messy, but we still got to do it, right? We got to come together under those,
Yes.
Whether we agree with each other or not. And water is one of those things that doesn't matter who. We can all agree on water. It's one of those connecting issues.
Definitely.
Everywhere in all of my work. People wouldn't normally even talk to me about anything. We don't have any other ideologies that match, but we certainly can understand that protecting water and making sure that everybody has access to it is an important thing. That's just the perfect way to end this. Thank you, Nicole, always for going on this journey with me and working every week with me to get this broadcast up and running and out to people. And thank you, Colleen, for all of your work, your lifelong work that you do to protect water and the poor and all of those things. Thank you so much. And until next time, my friends, try to take care of each other and stay afloat.